Hey guys, welcome back to Entrepreneurs Galore. This is episode 3, and today I have a really nice guest that I've known my entire life. His name is Ahmed Raza. This man, let me tell you the biography of this man, all right? This man has been a literal entrepreneur for his entire life. And when I say entire life, I really do mean entire life, okay? This man in high school and in middle school, he was flipping items on eBay. He would literally take things that his mom still needed and he would just go ahead and flip them on eBay. You know why? Because he's an entrepreneur. That's what entrepreneurs do, all right? They always try to find a way. In high school, he started hacking Xbox 360s in the prehistoric era when we were still in high school, okay? Fast forward to college, this man starts managing a private equity for sub $1 million. He handled it, he exited, and he was good. Then he gets a job offer from one of the most prestigious banks, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, in New York. He moves to New York, and while he's working on his full time job, he starts not one, but two side projects. One, a social media app called Which One, and the second, Rapid Diligence, a business evaluating online businesses. I know that's redundant. A business evaluating online businesses for mergers and acquisitions. I would like to welcome a really old time best friend, Ahmed Raza. What's up, Ahmed? How are you, dog?
What's up, dude? That was an awesome introduction. For what it's worth, I don't think I sold any of my mom's stuff on eBay, but I mean,
I do remember you saying
maybe
that
I
you
did.
you told me that you sold like a lamp or something, bro. Like,
All
and
right,
you
in
guys were
that
just
case,
like eating a, you guys were just eating in the dark at that time. So
I'm
yeah,
sorry, mom. I needed to do it. It was part of the journey.
exactly, bro. It was a part of the entrepreneurial journey that he was on since he was like 5 years old. So tell the
Mhm.
audience a little bit about yourself, man. I hope I did a good job introducing you, but like, what would you like to add? Like, what would you like the people to know about you?
Well, I'm a lot less fantastic than you made me sound, so there's that. But no, I think you covered most of it. Mostly just been working with online businesses for most of my adult life. Started with buying a few online businesses, and this was at a time when a lot of these transactions were a lot smaller. So I did that with some personal capital, borrowed some money, and that kind of like that little success is what led to the private equity fund. It basically showed a track record to investors. Started a private equity fund, ended up exiting it, and then I didn't love like the aspect of managing a private equity fund. The
Mhm.
reason was because you were really tied in to investors. Like you answer to a lot of people, right? Because you had so many people that were investing in that fund, and I wanted to do something that I bootstrapped on my own, but still in that space. So that's why I started Rapid Diligence because I was like, hey, I can do this. I don't need outside investor capital, but I can still be part of that journey for a lot of people. And I'm happy to get into like what that looks like on a day to day. But it's a really fun process because when a lot of people think of what I do or what my business does, they think of like massive funds coming through like, hey, I want to buy this business, this is like our 10th acquisition, like, and that is true. There are some businesses like that we work with, but for a lot of people we work with, this is a really, really meaningful step in their journey, right? So I would say the typical client for us looks like, hey, I've been working my corporate job for the last 10 years. I've saved up some money. I've always wanted to own my own business. This is the gradual next step. And I don't know what I don't know. And I need your help to get there, right? So we play such an important role in that journey. And I think that's what makes it so much fun and really makes it so worthwhile.
Okay, nice. So obviously, like, is it any part of it like super stressful for you? Like, you're basically managing like people's life savings, right? Or you're evaluating that decision on whether they should buy a already established business or not. Correct?
Yeah, exactly. And so it's definitely stressful in the sense that like the responsibility we have on our shoulders because we're effectively their last line of defense, right? If we say yes, this is a good purchase, they're more than likely they're going to make that purchase, right? So
Hmm.
I think it's definitely stressful. I mean, it's not like, if we look at it just objectively, it's not like any of that is on me or we have any liability, but from just like a ethos mental perspective, right? It's like, oh, we have such a big responsibility on our shoulders. But again, I think it's one of those things where you have to just take it every deal at a time. And, you can't let one deal like just get to you. The goal is just to go in there and do our best work every single time with the data and the knowledge we have.
Hmm. So talk to me about that data, right? So what exactly have you seen from like these online businesses that would say like that would either say that would cause you to either say like, hey, I don't think that this is a good business to get into or buy, or you would say that, hey, this is a a good business to actually get.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of different factors that play into it. One of the things I try to advise my clients against is basically going after businesses that look like they're just kind of part of like a trend or part of like a hype thing, you know. So they were built in the last 12 months. They experienced some hyper growth, and now the seller's like, yeah, I just want to sell it. You know, if anything, longevity is the greatest factor in determining long-term success. So I always say like go after things that make sense. And then, you know, this sounds derivative, but basically going after businesses that make fundamental business sense, right? So I think what happens is when people are looking to buy businesses, they get really caught up in the numbers, right? And the numbers are important, but at the end of the day, you have to take a step back and ask yourself, does this business even make fundamental sense? Or was it just built in order to be sold? And if I give you an example, I would say, you know, a few years ago, we were seeing these content websites, and these were just basically blog sites that were
Mhm.
generating revenue. And what they would do is they would do reviews of every single thing in the world, right? So they would say like the top 10, you know, toasters you can buy, the top 10 cars you can buy. And the question you ask yourself is like, well, what value are they providing? Because there's no way they're going and evaluating every single toaster. And you
Mhm.
can't develop a subject matter expertise into everything, right? So when these businesses were really popular 2 years ago, I always advised my clients to stay away from them because I was like, look, there's going to come a time where Google's going to catch up to this fact that these people are just putting out content for the sake of putting out content. All they're doing is ripping things off of Amazon, and they're not even rewording it, right? They're just copy and pasting for the most part. And you know, lo and behold, like 2 years or about a year ago, we saw like a massive Google update, and a lot of these websites were penalized, right? A lot of these websites lost a significant amount of their traffic because at the end of the day, if you took a step back and said, what value is this business really providing, you'd come up short every single time, right? So
Mhm.
I think longevity, you know, stability and growth, and good fundamental business sense is what makes really great acquisitions. And then just staying away from things that are trendy. You know, it's a lot of those like not flashy products that end up doing really well long term, like I don't know, like dental medical products, like things like that, things that will there will always be a constant need for, and they won't necessarily, you know, phase out in the next like 6 months or 12 months.
Gotcha. Okay. So you would basically say like you would advise a customer to actually avoid a business that is like circled around fidget spinners, for example, because like those were absolutely huge, or like even I guess drop shipping in a way. So would you like just have customers just avoid drop shipping in general?
Yeah, that's a good question. I always have to be careful with this one because I
Because you're gonna
actually
get
wrote a
roasted by all the Twitter bros. That's why.
Hey, yeah, the TikTok bros are gonna come for me. But I actually wrote a blog post on our website about this, I think like a year ago. I've always been pretty critical of dropshipping businesses. I'm not saying they're all bad, but I'm saying guilty until proven innocent with them. And the reason is because, again, fundamentally, right, what happens with a lot of these dropshipping businesses is you're using the same suppliers. You're not like, where is your barrier to entry? And what value
Hmm.
are you actually providing, right? And again, you come up short every single time because with most dropshipping businesses, it's a Shopify store and some generic supplier, and your margins suck. Your customer experience sucks because you don't have control over the supply chain. You don't have control over the products. So I would say I'm pretty like wary of drop shipping businesses. You know, as you've seen on TikTok, on Twitter, they're everywhere, and you know, usually that's not a great sign when they tell you you can start a business for $5 and all that good stuff. But anyway, you know, so I would say, yeah, I generally advise against them, but there have been exceptions, right? We've seen some really good dropshipping businesses come in through our doors, and we've actually had deals done through them. But again, that's more of an exception than a rule.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm definitely gonna clip that and I'm gonna title it something like, I don't know, businessman hates drop shipping, and then it's gonna go viral and then it'll be great for your
You,
business in particular. So
I'm gonna get death threats, man. Yeah, you should take that, post it on TikTok, and then you know I'll have to shut down my shop because you know they're gonna come for me.
that's fine, bro. Like, because the thing is, man, you also have to realize who you're dealing with, right? You're dealing with like people that are much richer than drop shippers. You know what I'm saying? Like, like just because you're not flexing cash like that, just because you're not flexing cash like the drop shippers, bro, it doesn't mean that you don't got it like that. You know what I'm saying?
I
So
don't have a
like they
Lambo,
don't
bro, so I,
they
I don't
don't
stand a chance.
drop shippers don't know that you're sitting in your penthouse in New York City in the middle of Manhattan right now. You know what I'm saying? Like these drop shippers are just like from a state like Montana who just like literally banned TikTok right now, so they're probably not even gonna see this. You know what I'm
Oh
saying?
my
They're just
god.
like, so you're good, man. You're good.
All right, well
So
that's good to hear.
so obviously we talked a little bit about drop shipping, right? We talked a little bit
Mhm.
about like what type of businesses to actually avoid in terms of trending products and whatnot. So can you
Mhm.
give me like some examples or some key metrics that you always look for businesses for your customers to actually get into or buy? Like what would you consider a good buy?
Yeah, I think most of what I mentioned kind of falls into that same category. But again, I think longevity is a big one. Good business operations, the business, and then one thing I always tell my clients is that, hey, the last thing you want to do is buy a job, right? Because if you're going to buy a business and it's 70 hours a week by the owner, you're effectively buying a job, right? So good operations, a good team in place, good processes, all of that is super important, especially when you start thinking about businesses that are more e-commerce software related, where there's a lot of hands, day-to-day hands-on work. I definitely focus on that. And longevity is a big one. It's one of those things where, again, it just has to make business sense. We look at growth, like you don't, especially for your first acquisition, you don't want to buy a business that's declining, because again, you don't want your first acquisition to be a distressed acquisition, right, or a distressed asset. And so I think a lot of that, and then what also plays to your strengths, right, plays to your lifestyle and your strengths. If you're someone like me, I'm not big on sales. At heart, I'm always an engineer, right? So I like processes. I like, building things. So the worst thing I could do is buy a business that is purely focused on sales, right? Because I hate that. I'm not big on sales. It's not something I enjoy. So always play into your strengths, and then just buy businesses that make fundamental sense. And again, they're not going to be sexy, but like that's the point, right? That they're going to make sense.
Hmm. So would you say that like a basic business is like better than a sexy business, right? Like at least that's what I'm getting, because anybody can ride the hype train, I guess, but like you said, you want something that's like foundationally sound as well, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And look, there's some good businesses out there that are, that are sexy or that are fun, that are hype. But again, I think when you think about acquisitions and buying small businesses, like you want to go after things that are good, fundamentally sound. And usually these are things that have stood the test of time. I don't know if 10 years, if a crypto business is going to be relevant, but I know a plumbing company or HVAC company. And I know then we get more into traditional businesses, which isn't really inside of the scope of what a lot of what we do. But I think that analogy still stands, where you go after things that will make sense long term, and you'll come out on top, 8, 9 out of 10 times.
Right. So I know one interesting thing that you mentioned that I did not think of before when actually, going on and acquiring a business. So, for
Mhm.
example, let's say a customer acquires a business, right? And there's a entire team in place and they have their processes. Like, have you seen that new boss kind of come in and just completely like disrupt the processes that the team already has in place, or what exactly does that look like? Like, do you think that there tends to be a lot of friction from your customer side, aka the person that wants to buy the business, and they kind of want to turn things around? They're like, no, we're gonna do things this way now. Have you seen a lot of that, or like what do you tend to see happens mostly?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, the advice I give my clients, right, who in this case are the buyers, is to not shake things up for at least the first 6 to 12 months, right? When you come in, the goal, your primary responsibility as their new boss, as the new owner, is to learn everything to the best of your abilities, before you go in and start making changes, especially drastic changes. And given that most of the acquisitions we oversee, they're not like distressed assets. So it's not people buying a business to like because it's failing. It's usually they're buying a business because it's doing really well, right? So they're
Mhm.
almost like buying the cash flow, etc. I almost see the opposite, where a lot of buyers come in very cautiously and they're very respectful of what's already been put in place, right? Because for sellers, especially ones that have been working on this for a long time, it's a big part of their identity, right? It's their baby. They've built this business up. These team members are like family. This isn't like a multinational corporation, right? These are small businesses. So usually they're actually very respectful. They come in and they're like, hey, like we're not looking to shake things up. We're just coming in as a new owner, a new investor, and just looking to really just understand how things work and then incrementally make changes to better the business and to improve the business over the long term. So that's what I always advise. Again, the exception being if you're buying a distressed asset that's in free fall, then you have to come in and really shake things up. But 9 out of 10 times that's not the case. So being like understanding that this is something this seller has built, and every single employee there has more experience with that business than you do coming in, right? You have
Hmm.
to be respectful of that. And in fact, there are always a little bit, a little bit nervous buyers coming into this because they're like, we don't want the general manager to quit on us. We don't, because how is the business going to run? I don't know anything about this business yet. So they usually come in, and in fact, I have seen more pay raises than firings, if that makes sense. So
Really?
you're more likely to come in and give everyone like a little raise or make their lives better and easier rather than make their lives harder. So I had a client who bought a software business, and it was a pretty sizable business. And what the first thing he did in his first month was he hired an extra customer support person, because the two that were on the team already were very like backed up. They were working weekends, nights, holidays. So his thing was, all right, we're going to hire a third person. No one's getting a pay cut. No one's, but we're going to get this third person in. You guys train them so that way you can have some weekends off. You can have holidays off. You can take time off. And so that, I've seen more of those things happen rather than people come in and like slash and burn.
Hmm. So for that particular business, for example, right?
Mhm.
I don't know if you can obviously dive into the details. Is that okay?
Yeah, as long as we're not like naming it or anything,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, we're
totally
not we're
fine.
not going
Yeah.
to name the business itself,
Yeah.
but I want to make sure that you're not going to be like breaching any contracts or anything.
Ah, man, the TikTok bros are coming for me. Bring the lawyers too, I guess. I mean,
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, might as well, right? And
right.
either way, like dealing with lawyers is not that bad, you know. So,
This guy.
um, anyways, so that specific software business, for example, right? Like, so you mentioned
Mhm,
that they had like a customer support team and everything. So, can you tell me some details about that, like, just so we can have like the audience understand like how much something like this would actually cost? Like, so I would like to know, how many employees that business had, if
mhm,
obviously you remember.
mhm,
um you said that it's a software company, of course, and how much revenue it was generating, and
mhm.
how much did it actually cost for your client to actually buy in total?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the total purchase price, it wasn't massive for that one. It was about, I think, right around 5 million. So it's been a little bit, so I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was about 5 million. They had about 9 employees. And then in terms of what it was making, I don't remember revenue numbers, but I know it was making somewhere around 1.2 million a year in net profit. So they bought it at
Mhm.
about a four something times
and
multiple.
that's and,
Uh,
and that's net
mhm.
profit. That's not even revenue, that's profit. That's what the guy was taking home.
Exactly. Yeah. So most of these small business acquisitions, they happen on a net profit basis. So
Okay.
when you go into like larger companies and corporations, you'll have businesses like, especially at like the startup corporation level, they get sold at sometimes at revenue, like revenue multiples, but at the small business level. And again, when I say small business, I mean anything under like $200 million.
That's a
They're
small
sold at
business.
I think like revenue wise, so anything with the valuation of under 250 million, yeah, I think even yeah, it's about small
Okay.
business, maybe 200 million. I don't know what the hard number is. I know there's like a definition by like the Small Business Association or something, but I don't know what that exact definition is. But it's a lot larger than you think when we say small business. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I mean, all I'm hearing is that you're calling out all the crypto bros that didn't make 250 million, that they're little brokies, you know what I'm saying?
I
So
mean it is what it is, man.
they're already coming for you. Might as well just make it a little worse, you know?
Yeah.
So what tell me about like the largest deal that you actually have ever done. Like what was that like, and how much money was actually involved in that?
Yeah, that's a good question because I think the thing with these larger deals is we like with smaller deals we usually own the entire process, right? So they'll come to us like for anything under $5-10 million, they'll come to us and we do the full due diligence work, right? Like we look through everything. For a lot of these larger deals, what happens is that they usually have different service providers for different components, right? So they'll have someone else looking at the financials, someone else looking at the technical, someone else looking at the legal. So it's rare that once these deals get substantially larger, that we're looking through the entire process. But I mean, I think the largest one was like there was a company buying another security company for like I don't know, it was like 200 something million. And then all we did for that was just the technology diligence. So we looked through their code base, we did review of their tech stack, but we didn't do any like operational analysis or financial analysis or anything like that. So with these larger deals, a lot of the diligence work gets more like segmented into different service providers. So it usually becomes more of like a collaborative process, working with both the team, the buyers, and then the other service providers to make sure there's that anything, if there's overlap or anything, we can catch that.
Understood. So what did you like, let's say for example you're dealing with a small business that's like, less than $250 million, right?
Mhm.
And when you say due diligence and you're basically checking, security, the technology code base,
Mhm.
anything from like operational and managing employees, and I'm sure you're checking like financials as well. So like talk to me about that process. Like what exactly does that look like, and how exactly do you tackle all these different departments?
Yeah. So a lot of it. So first, it starts with document collection, right? So we get everything we need from the seller, and usually this is a dynamic process. So as we get things, we need more things. We have more questions, more requests. So first, we kind of get the basis of everything we need. And when I say that, I mean like financial information, P&L, bank statements, taxes, basically anything we could need to validate. And then we kind of segment it up, right? It's like what has the buyer hired us for? Is it just operational diligence? Is it technical? Do you want us to review the financials? Sometimes it's everything, sometimes it's just pieces. And then we have a team that we like break it down, right? So for example, I'm not looking through any of the business's financials because again, I don't want to do that and I'm not qualified to do that. So I have a CPA on my team. And in fact, we have a small CPA team that actually goes through and looks through the financials and kind of validates everything. We work with software engineers, folks with tech background, to look at like some of the code, do some of the code reviews. And then one thing we've started also doing is like we found people that are running a lot of these businesses that are being acquired. So for example, we've partnered with people that run with this group that runs like 70 different content websites, right? So when we have a content website that comes through our doors, we will also bring them on as a part of the due diligence process and have them review parts of that business. So the goal is to get as many experts, or as the best experts on a deal, to make sure that we catch everything. But it's a 3 to 4 week process. Usually for larger deals, it takes a lot longer. But usually it's a pretty quick 3 to 4 week process. And so we just go through everything, we ask questions, and then we put together a finalized report that says, hey, here's everything we found, here's all the risks, here's all the issues, and then kind of let them run with it.
Nice. Okay. Okay. Well, I think that's good information for like at least like trying to buy a business, right? I kind of want to pivot to something else. Like I want to talk about your social media app. Which one, right? So I
Yeah.
want to know about like what got that process started. Like, was that just something that you wanted to try out and build, or like how exactly is that going, and where do you see it? Where do you want to take it?
Yeah, so which one, for anyone listening, is that it's basically a social media app that you create polls, right? So think of like TikTok, but for polls. So you can
Hmm.
create a fun social poll, have pictures, have questions, and then anyone else on the app can answer it. By far, it was probably my favorite thing to build with
Yeah.
everything I've done. It was just so much fun. We had an amazing team of like an amazing design and engineering team, and I think it was a really fun product because everything else I've built, for the most part, has been pretty like B2B, right? So it's been more business oriented. So like the average everyday consumer doesn't have a need for it. But with which one, anyone can go in and download it, right? So I think that's what was super fun, was like having your own friends, people, using an app that you've like built out with your team. It's gratifying. It's a fun experience. Um, I think it's a lot more difficult than a traditional business to like grow and scale, in the sense that something like this only works at scale, right? So imagine if
Hmm.
you got on Twitter and you saw like 4 tweets every few days, you would never get on Twitter again, right?
Right.
And so
Yeah.
things like this, the problem is they only work at scale, and it's a double-sided marketplace, right? So you need people that are creating tweets, then you need people that are liking or retweeting things, right? Same with which one, you need people that are creating polls, and you need people that are actively voting on polls. If all of that doesn't align, the business doesn't work, right? And then monetizing it is hard. Getting people to download apps is really hard. So it was one of the most like gratifying things I've worked on. It's one of the coolest things. But it was definitely more difficult than building out a more traditional business. And long term, I think it was also one of those things where I didn't necessarily want to build it out because I thought it would become like this multi-billion-dollar company. That would have been a nice, add on. But
Yeah.
But it was one of those things I just genuinely enjoyed it. Like, you know how they always say, like, what would you do if you won the lottery and you could work on something for free? Like, I would do that, right? Like, I have a blast doing it. It's a lot of fun. So I don't know candidly what the long term like results or goals or plans for that is quite yet. I mean, we've been working on it for quite some time, but I think it's one of those things we're just taking it as it goes, right? And that's okay. Like, you have some things you work on and you have like these massive plans and growth avenues and all these things you want to do. And then some things you do because they make you feel nice and you enjoy it, and it fills your, it fills your heart with happiness. So it's like, it's okay, right? So yeah, that's, I don't have much on the long-term growth for that just yet, but hey, maybe soon.
Yeah, no, for sure. So you would say that working on social media apps that are built upon Firebase are actually like, your forte.
Get out of here. For what it's worth, Firebase is an exceptional tool and I highly recommend it. Just don't try to scale on it. It's a little tough.
Yeah, Ahmed's smart idea was to tell Elon Musk that he should scale Twitter on Firebase. So
Honestly, it saves some
he
money.
yeah, he deleted that tweet ever since. I'm just playing. He actually did not tweet it. Ahmed is a software engineer that graduated from UT Austin with a computer science degree. Okay, like this man knows what he's talking about.
I pretend, but thank you. I appreciate it.
You pretend pretty well, right? I mean, you pretended enough to actually get a corporate job in New York. So where was it? Was it Wall Street? Were you working at Wall Street, or where was it
Yeah, it
located?
was in the financial district. So I think it was like a street off of Wall Street. Maybe it was on Wall Street. I don't know, man. It was a long time ago. 3 years, 4 years. That's a long time.
Yeah, you're saying it like you're like 50 years old, but you're literally
I'm
like,
pushing 50.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure in like another 25 years you'll be pushing 50, yeah, for sure. Um
Yeah.
so so one of the other things, um tell me about like the personal journey of like becoming an entrepreneur, right? Like
Mhm.
what were you just born like this, or like did you have to kind of I guess mold yourself into it, or what's your opinion on it?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a loaded question. I mean, I think most of that journey for a lot of entrepreneurs comes out of like personal need, personal necessity, right? So for me, I didn't grow up with a lot. And so, we make those jokes about like the selling things on eBay, hacking Xboxes, fixing Xboxes. Maybe in another world, if I had been born into a lot of like money or whatever, right? Like if I had a very comfortable childhood, those things would have never, happened. But a lot of those things were born out of necessity, right? They were born out of this need for a bit more. They were just being able to having things that you wanted as a kid that your parents couldn't afford or that you couldn't have. So the goal, the two options were you either accept that or you do something about it, right? And I decided to take the latter option. I said, like, okay, I understand, we don't have a lot, but that doesn't mean that I can't work hard and, make something of myself even as a kid, right? So that's what that was kind of the journey I took. As I got older, it got essentially that same mindset continued, right? And I wanted to always be able to be in control of my own destiny and be able to work on things I care about and not have to, essentially just accept things for what they were. So that was most of why those things happened in the first place. And it molds you along the way, right? You become so used to like wanting to do things yourself and figuring things out yourself. And we call it being an entrepreneur, but really it's just figuring things out, right? And so that's really what inspired the journey, or what kind of constituted the journey.
Nice. Okay. So you've worked on both sides, right? You've basically like, left your full-time job and you're entrepreneur or you're a businessman, right? And you've also worked on a full-time job, like corporate America. Like you cannot get more corporate America than the job that you had. Like
Right.
what are some like pros and cons that you feel like people should know before like they actually quit their full-time job and like, just go head on with their business? Like what would you, if somebody's just like starting off on that journey, what would you recommend that they do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think one of the first things is my advice is always, please don't quit your job, right? Keep your job and work on what you want to work on part time, because I don't know, like 95% or so of businesses can be worked on part time. So do that and then make a game plan, right? Like what revenue do you need to get to in order to be able to quit your job if that is something you want to do, to be an entrepreneur full time? I think we hear all of these stories about these people that take like these massive leaps of faith, right? I think the most prominent one being Elon Musk, where he sold PayPal for like 200 million and then put 100 into Tesla or 100 into SpaceX and didn't
Hmm.
have money for rent. Again, amazing story, incredible grit, but don't do that, right? Because there's a reason these are noteworthy stories, because they're the exception, not the rule, right? So make a game plan, work after hours, work before hours, do what you need to do and figure out what that number is that gets you to a point where you can quit your job and say, I'm going to take this full time, right? So make a game plan. And then I think the other thing is like find your why, right? Because and I'm happy to go into mine as well, but you need to have a why you want to do this, right? Because this journey gets really tough, it gets really lonely, and sometimes it's not worth it for most people. I think it's very glorified, but it's not that glorious in on the day to day, right? So when times get tough and you have your why, it's going to push you through it, right? And one of my favorite quotes is entrepreneurs are willing to work 80 hours a week to avoid working 40 hours a week, right? Because for a lot of entrepreneurs, there's this chip on your shoulder, right? You want to prove something to the world. You want to prove something to someone. You want to prove something to yourself. You want to build something, right? If you don't have this burning desire, you can still be an entrepreneur. I actually really recommend everyone have a side hustle, a part-time thing that they do, because it keeps your brain fresh and it keeps you excited. And it's nice to have some level of diversified income, right? But I think a lot of people get it twisted, what it feels like or what that journey is like to quit your job, to do something full time as an entrepreneur. Which it's not, right? But it just comes down to, again, make a plan, find your why. And one of the quotes that I'm going to share that I've also been really, I enjoy, and I think it kind of really embodies this entire experience is, people romanticize their plans but dread the execution. The magic you're
Yeah.
looking for is in the work you're avoiding, right? So
Right.
I always tell some of my friends this, and people that'll like ask, I say like, when you start a business, it's a lot of fun, right? We've all been there, right? Like you register a domain, you build out your WordPress website, or if you're like me, HTML, CSS, you build out that website. It's so much fun, right? It's this novelty. You're excited. But then the fun ends, right? And then the work starts, right? And the work of being an entrepreneur is not what you see online. It's not Lambos and penthouses, right? It's just work. Like any other job, it's work. And if you come in with a mindset that that's going to be your life, you're in
Hmm.
for a pretty nasty surprise, right? And the best analogy here that I always think about is a sports analogy, right? Because any professional athlete, right? Like you look at like a professional basketball player, boxer, marathon runner, whatever it is, right? And you see what the audience sees, right? Which is exciting. It's LeBron James scoring 50 points. It's Elliot Kipchoge breaking the 2 hour marathon. And all of that's cool. But most professional athletes spend 1% or less of their time in front of an audience. If you look at a professional boxer, like, and you're like, hey, I want to be the guy in the ring that's like boxing and knocking people out with the audience cheering for me, I want that to be my life. But the truth is, even for a professional boxer, that's not their life. Their life is a diet, a proper diet that consists of high protein, high carb, it's properly sleeping, and it's just a shit ton of running on a treadmill, conditioning, and hitting a bag again and again till it becomes mind numbing. LeBron James, Steph Curry, all they do all day is they take shots, right? You empty gyms, taking that same shot again and again, like hundreds of thousands of times. That's what it's like to be a professional athlete, right? That's the true work.
Hmm.
And so I think, drawing that analogy again back to entrepreneurship, the true work is the conditioning, it's the diet, it's the sleeping, right? If you were a professional athlete, it's the same thing. It's the spreadsheets, it's the cold sales calls, it's the it's being a janitor basically for your company. It's cleaning shit up, it's putting out fires. That's really all that it is. And I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a lot of fun, it's incredibly gratifying, and 10 out of 10 times I would do this again over what I did at my corporate job. And I have zero regrets over my decision. I love it every single day, but it's not what people think it is. And but it is a lot of fun. Not to be a Debbie Downer, it's not my point. My point is to just be realistic about what this journey looks like, because I do think, like social media, TikTok, all these places, and before that it was magazines and newspapers. So something that's just a contemporary problem. It's always existed, but I think it glorifies that journey when really the only thing glorified is the destination, right? It's when you sell that company or you ring the New York bell on the New York Stock Exchange because your company IPO'd. Yeah, those are glorified experiences. Everything else is just work. But hopefully, again, your why is strong and your game plan is strong and what you're doing you care about, and so it makes it worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you touched on a great point because it's like anything that I've ever worked at as well. Like I'm obviously not an entrepreneur by myself. I just work like a 9 to 5 job, but it's always like, bro, it becomes grueling and like it's very easy to like romanticize about like building your own business and whatnot, and then like
Mm-hmm.
when what if me personally, when it comes to the actual work, I'm just like, bro, I don't want to do this anymore. So
Yeah.
and obviously it comes, I think it's kind of starting to get magnified as well, I guess because of
Mm-hmm.
like podcasts like this as well, like called Entrepreneurs Galore, where we're just basically glorifying people who are actually living the life that everybody kind of wants to live, but in terms
Mm-hmm.
of like the nice cars and the freedom and whatnot. But like the reality is that you're kind of being lied to on social media as well. Like everybody's just posting their highlight reels, right? Like nobody's showing all the different like 80-hour work weeks that they're actually working, or nobody's showing like LeBron James actually putting up shots, right? Like if they showed like LeBron James on like a live stream for 24 hours in a day, like people will be like, yeah, there's no way that I could ever do this. And that's probably why he's
100%.
either he's top two of all time, like, and that's not even
Mm-hmm.
debatable, but that's
Right.
literally why. Sure, is it a lot of it is like god-given talent and height and all these things, but it's also he made the most out of it. Like like I remember people who were just tall, but like it's the same joke that we make, right, all the time with like tall people. It's like, why the hell did you like are you not on a basketball court? Or
Yeah.
it's like, you were kind of given a god given ability, and you didn't put in the hard work that you needed to. You didn't
Mm-hmm.
hone in on your craft as well. So I think entrepreneurship as well, like regardless of whatever you're doing in terms of like being either a plumber or a software engineer, or being in rapid diligence, or being a virtual assistant, whatever it is, I think
Mm-hmm.
you need to hone in on the craft every single day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I love that live stream, kind of example where if someone was to see the work that goes into it, they'd be like, yeah, screw this. I don't want to be a professional athlete. And I think that's true of entrepreneurship too, right? It's like I think if people actually saw what goes behind closed what happens behind closed doors, they would reconsider their whole like ideology of entrepreneurship. But not to leave it on a too pessimistic of a note, and it's not really, I don't think I was being pessimistic. I think the goal is just to be more realistic, because it's almost like the pendulum needs to swing in the other direction, right? Because every other person out there is talking about, oh, like Lambos and penthouses, and like, oh, do whatever you want, blah blah blah. But I think we need to be realistic. I think we owe it to people to be realistic, right? Because
Yes.
otherwise you lead people on into a journey that they don't even know that they're getting into. But I will say one of the greatest things is like having control over your own life, right? And if you're kind of like that type of person, it's like, okay, I want control over as many aspects of my life as possible, like I am. Entrepreneurship's amazing, right? Because I mean, there are days where I don't work, right? And you can't do that in a corporate job. I don't feel like working, so I don't work, right? And I have a small team in place that takes care of things. I think I've shared this with you personally, but it's I hate doing sales calls. I love talking to our clients and stuff, but I hate the aspect of sales calls because that means I have to be in front of a phone at a certain time, and that means that I need to follow up with people. I just don't like that aspect. It doesn't give me the freedom I need. So I hired a salesperson that now takes care of that, which has now significantly improved my quality of life, right? Because now I don't have to worry about that. You can't do that for a job, right? You can't say, oh, I don't like this part of my job, I'm going to hire someone to do it. That's not how
Right.
it works. You do your job. And so, there are those positive aspects. I mean, there are weeks where I don't work and I don't need to work because I'm abroad, I'm doing something, and I have a team that takes care of it. But there are weeks that I'm also like, man, I'm really not feeling it. We all have our bad days, right? And I'm like, dude,
Yes.
the last thing I want to do is get on a call with the client. And the last thing I want to do is, and there have been times I've been sick. And especially early on when your business is small, you don't have a team. Um, I been times where I was sick. I think there are both sides, and so it's definitely not all glorified, but I think when you do it correctly, it's a beautiful, wonderful thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's it's just the nature of this life and this world in general, right? Like everything is going to have their pros and cons, right? Like it's like, okay, like you can make $100,000 a year by working in corporate America and you could just be fine, but it's like, okay, well, you have to, either commute every single day, 5 days a
Mhm.
week, and then you just have the weekends to yourself. For entrepreneur, I personally think that the majority of the times, like, entrepreneurs are more than likely to work weekends than like regular other people,
Mhm.
just working jobs. So I think a lot of people forget that aspect of, like, hey, if you're trying to build something from the ground up, it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of time, and you don't see results right away at all.
Yeah.
Like, you do not get a paycheck at the end of the 2 weeks or the end of the month. Like, you probably some most of the times, like, these entrepreneurs with, like, that sell these software companies or whatever the case might be, whatever they sell, they don't see that return until like 3 years later. So it's like,
Absolutely.
okay,
Yeah.
you either do it and build it and you eat ramen noodles for like the next 3 years, or you live comfortably. And
Yeah.
I think I'm forgetting what the paradox name is itself. But it's basically the principle is basically just about like how comfortable you are, and if you're
Mhm.
comfortable enough, it's to your own detriment. Does
Mhm.
that make sense? So,
Yeah.
like, let's say for example, like, this guy, I'm completely blanking on what the paradox is basically called, but the example that was given to me, it was that, hey, if this person, if Yusha gets a job at at a company that's 1 mile away from his house, right? He
Mhm.
is going to walk to work. But if he gets it
Mhm.
2 miles away, then he will, bike to work, or whatever the case might
Yeah,
be,
yeah.
right? So
Mhm.
it's like, okay, well, you're probably, I don't know how to explain it properly. Never mind. To be honest with you, I am just completely blanking out in my mind. But I know that, like, basically what I'm trying to say is that, like, if you're, like, a paycheck is sometimes is basically what you're given to, like, give up on your dream, right? I heard that once. I was like, damn. And I was
Mhm.
like, yeah, I'm good. Definitely suffer from that. It's like, okay, if the
Mhm.
money's good, like, I'm just like, you know what, it's okay, I'm good.
Yeah, no, I know what paradox you're referring to. I'm forgetting as well. I wish I had remembered, but yeah, I agree, and it's also like I think a lot of it is also it's a lot more deeply rooted, right? If for people that don't grow up with a lot, like getting that paycheck, and that's why it was so tough emotionally for me. It's like making six figures out of college. It was I couldn't imagine what that was like, right? In a past life. I mean, candidly, I went from being in college and like going being at the grocery store, and there were literally times in my life where I had to decide between like bread and eggs, like actual times
Yeah.
that have happened, right? And so in college especially, like there were times where I had to make that decision. I just didn't have enough money, and so going from that to like a good six-figure job, like throwing that away is so tough. But like it's just you have if you want it bad enough, you just have to do it, right? So I agree, and I maybe to a point it is a paycheck to not your dreams. But I guess for some people, and for a lot of people, actually, it's worthwhile, and it's they say like with corporate jobs, right? Like people have these perceptions where it's that the same thing you said, where the job, like you're getting a paycheck to not pursue your dreams or your job. But I also have that other perception too, where corporate jobs allow a lot of people that would have otherwise never been able to start a family, have a mortgage,
Yes.
hell, in this country have health insurance, right? And so it gives you a lot to take home. And like you said, there's always pros and cons. Grass is always greener.
Yeah.
There's a lot of issues with both things, but as with anything in life, we get to choose our struggles, and if that's what you want, that's what you want. And if you want to go the entrepreneurship route, more power to you. But neither of those things will leave you in a place or in a state of mind where you're like, oh, this is perfect and I'm incredibly happy with everything. I mean, you're always going to have things to complain about, or things that you wish were different.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think human beings are very good at, like, finding things to just go ahead and complain about. And this is not me, like, trying to shit on, like, anybody in corporate America. I have a job myself. I literally
Yeah.
work a job. I'm one of those people that, like, I just work a
Bro, you
nine
about
to
to get
five.
fired tomorrow, bro.
I'm about to, bro.
They're gonna hear you and you're about to get fired, bro.
They're gonna be like, bro, what is this guy doing? What is he talking about? Talking about, like, starting his own business and stuff. Like, they're gonna be like, bro, this is corporate espionage or something, bro. but I'm not shitting on anybody that
Yeah.
works a 9 to 5 job. The only person that I'll ever shit on for working a regular job is probably Dennis. That's it. Dennis is so for those who don't know, Dennis is a made up character. He does not actually exist, but he basically he has dedicated his entire life to corporate America. Okay, he basically will work 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. if you tell him to, with no problem whatsoever. And I mean that as a night shift, right? And then he'll go home, he'll sleep a little bit, and he'll basically disappear. He will not answer your text messages or anything. So Dennis, who is a made up character, if you're watching this, like, no hard feelings, but you know what I'm saying, you're just a corporate slave at this point. But yeah, do you have
Yeah,
any thoughts on Dennis?
I think this is elder abuse right now, man. You're
I also forgot to mention that Dennis is a man who is about 43 years old, and he doesn't see his kids anymore either. He, it's just bad, man. Like these fictional characters that we have made up
Mhm.
completely, it's just terrible, man.
And if you're listening and you somehow see a reflection of yourself in this Dennis persona, it's purely coincidental. It's not,
Yeah.
it's not reality. It's just this is just a fictional character.
Yeah. Like if you're like about 43 years old, your birthday was yesterday on May 17th, then I
Oh
don't know
my
what to
god.
tell you. You know what I'm saying? If you have a receding hairline, like
Stop. How did this, bro? No, take these clips and put them on TikTok.
oh, I absolutely will. I mean, everything is getting clipped for sure. Like, so
Oh my god.
there's going to be like I think three different groups of people that are actually coming for you, right? So it's going to be crypto bros, right? So
Uh-huh.
we got those. We got the drop shippers. You know what I'm saying? I
Yeah.
think you'll have your hands full with a lot of that. You might have to deactivate your Twitter. I don't know. I mean, yeah, sorry, your TikTok. Or maybe move to Montana because they already have it banned over there, so you don't have to,
Did they really ban it in Montana?
they
When
really
did this
banned it
happen?
like this morning.
Oh,
It
damn.
happened this morning. I was like, "What? This is insane." Um, and somebody tweeted like, "Oh, damn! The three people in Montana are not going to be able to use it." So I was like,
Bro,
"Damn!"
that's so random. They just wanted to get put on the map, right? So then when they
They
create a map of the US, so like where can you access TikTok? It'll be like this little piece that's like colored differently, and people are like, oh, what's that state? And then
like,
I think
"Oh, it's
it's a
Montana."
smart plan, man. Yeah, it's a smart
I
plan.
think so. It's
Montana's
just
about to blow up.
yeah, it's just a publicity stunt at this point, right? Like it's just nothing but that.
I
Uh,
tell ya.
and so you have those two people now. I think the the two grandparents and like the grandchild that live in Montana, those three people that live over there,
Hmm.
they're probably going to come after me because I keep on joking about it. um
They're mad at you, bro.
yeah,
They're gonna be angry.
I'll take the brunt from that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But and then the third one is the entire avatar and the fictional character of Dennis that we have made, and like
Yeah.
middle aged men with receding hairlines, you know what I'm saying? So with absolutely like zero friends and zero social life, like those people are definitely going to come after. Maybe you, but like I think since I initiated that conversation,
Uh-huh.
I'll take it as well. You know what I'm saying? So we got two and two. So
So you didn't tell me when I came on this podcast this was just a pure roast session. I mean, I thought this was an
honestly,
entrepreneurship thing.
so,
Like
but that's the thing, right? Like comedians are
uh-huh.
entrepreneurs, right? Like I am a comedian as well, but it's just that
Oh, you're
nobody
a
goes to my
comedian?
shows, right? Yeah, I'm just a
Oh,
comedian
okay.
in the shower. You know what I'm saying? Like people end up on American Idol in their minds
Uh-huh.
in the shower. Like, I'm just a pure comedian in the shower. I'm Andrew Schultz in the shower. That's it.
Okay,
You know what
so
I'm
you,
saying?
you
That's
tell
the only
yourself
time.
jokes?
Yeah, I tell myself jokes and I laugh at them. Like I basically have like the laugh track from Disney Channel always just constantly like playing in my mind.
Yeah.
So that's why. But now I
You
also
know,
see
I would cover your copay for therapy, man. I think
copay for
this.
therapy.
Yeah,
I,
like I think maybe
honestly,
I'm
man,
not a big believer. I mean, actually, I shouldn't say that. I'm gonna get canceled.
so
Uh,
wait, hold on. Let's touch upon this, Ahmed.
oh,
Why are you
oh
not a big
no,
believer in therapy?
I didn't
Is
say
it
that.
like what's going on inside that head? Like,
Look,
do
man,
you?
look. I think therapy is an effective way for people that have like. Okay, I'm no, we're not gonna
Damn,
go
you
down
can't
this
even
path,
say it with a straight face,
bro.
bro.
No,
You
look,
this
look.
man.
Look,
bro.
therapy is useful, right? Therapy is
Who is it
useful
useful for?
if you have an actual, like, okay, if you actually have like major anxiety issues or PTSD, or you've gone through some crazy shit as a kid or whatever, right? Like, therapy is useful, but I think a lot of people use it as a crutch because a lot of people get so used to the idea of being able to go to someone once a week and being able to just like spill everything to them. And here's my thing, right? Okay, and I know this is going to be unpopular, but look, you pay your therapist, right? You pay your
Yes.
therapist. They can't keep telling you you're the asshole because one, they only have a one-sided story, and two, you pay them. So if your therapist keeps telling you, "Hey, dude, you're kind of an asshole in the story," every single week, you're gonna stop going. It's human nature. So they have to be able to reaffirm some of the shit you're saying. Otherwise, it's not gonna. You're just not. It's a business model, right? And again, I'm not saying it's not effective. I'm just saying some people use it as a crutch.
Do you
But
think Dennis uses therapy as a crutch?
I don't think he goes to therapy, honestly.
Well, he definitely needs to, I think.
This guy.
I don't know. I don't know.
Oh man.
So okay, no, because I'm probably gonna put myself. I'm probably gonna get canceled for this, but I 100% agree with what you're saying as well. I
Hmm.
think that at a certain level, at a certain point of time, I think everybody figures out what exactly they're doing wrong, and that they understand that they need to do is actually take action to change their life,
Hmm.
right? And I'm not saying that, look, if you struggle with mental health, if you need help, please reach out to your friends, please reach out to family, anybody that you can actually trust, and reach out to a therapist if you need professional help as well, right? If you're
Right.
struggling with the mental illness, anxiety, PTSD, whatever the case might be, like you said, like, you should reach out to people and get diagnosed and get the proper medication if you need it, and
Hmm.
go about that way. But in reality, like, if you're just going to a therapist at all times and saying like, hey, my heart is broken, and it's been going on for like a good 2 years, yes, I understand that, like, that girl or that guy broke your heart, but bro, like, at some point you also have to take some accountability and responsibility and just move on with your life. You need to take the proper steps necessary to say, okay, I'm just not going to think about this person. If you have a
Hmm.
negative perception of yourself, and I think I talked about this on the first podcast episode with Ryden, about how to exactly think more positively. And it's like, you have to keep on telling yourself the same thing again and again.
100%.
And like
Yeah.
half of the time the therapist is telling you the same thing, you're just too damn stubborn to do anything about it.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay. But no, I agree. I wanted to become a therapist when I was in high school, but I'm kind of
Hmm.
glad that I
I
didn't go
remember.
that route. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did that shit too much for free in high school either way. So
Damn. So
I'm
not only were you a therapist, you were a free therapist, man.
yeah, bro, like, I was doing community service, bro. Like, that's how I got my 100 hours of high school community service. That's how I made it out.
No, that's fair, man. That's fair. No, it would have been funny if you did become a therapist. Maybe, hey, who knows? You know, like people that have like multiple careers and they become this and that. Maybe in like 10 years you do become a therapist. I mean, I'd like to see that if you can,
I hope not.
bro. Just hey, all I ask is that you live record some of the sessions.
I think
I'm
that
pretty sure
literally
that's like a
that,
thousand violations of like
that
different things, but
I
like
I think that literally goes against HIPAA violations. Like, that's like the number one rule that you cannot break. Like,
you gonna
client
let
and
HIPAA stop
therapist,
you, bro? Damn,
bro. Bro, don't
you
tell me,
you
bro,
not
because I'll
you not tough, bro. You gonna let
bro,
HIPAA stop you?
don't tell me, because I'll go out and get a degree and I'll become your therapist, all right? So
I, but I don't have a therapist,
bro,
so
okay, but that's what I'm
I'm pretty
saying.
sure
That's
I
why you
need
need
therapy,
to.
bro. I've
I
I've
agree.
never been to therapy and like, but like, okay, like seriously, what if I become less funny? Like
You
at
know
what
what?
cost?
I
At
respect
what
that.
cost is it worth fixing your issues? Like, imagine I'm like healed, right? But then I'm like, you say some shit, and I'm like, hey, bro, like, don't be like that. You know, like I become like boring. Like that's not worth it. It's like generational trauma is worth it. If no, I'm just kidding.
No, I 100% agree, bro. Generational trauma is definitely worth it if it comes at the cost. If you're funny, then generational trauma is worth the cost. Okay, how do you think
Yeah,
all these comedians get famous in the first place? They just have generational trauma and they're just weaponizing it. They're just monetizing it. That's all
yeah,
that's all that they're doing.
yeah,
So
absolutely, yeah.
they're
So that's
entrepreneurs
that's
because of
why, you know.
generational trauma.
For sure. Like honestly, okay. Imagine if I decided like when I turned 18, 19 to go to therapy and they healed me, right? I'd probably still be at Bank of America, bro. I'd probably be like, yeah, my life is great, like I'm just saying, like I would never do any. You have to have a chip on your shoulder, bro. You gotta
Absolutely.
find some, like you have to have some trauma, otherwise you're like boring as shit, and you don't do anything interesting with your life. And then it's like, what? And so maybe before I have kids, I'll take like a session or two and heal some of the like the
Why?
major.
But then your kids are just gonna like blow all your money away, and they're not if they don't have the trauma. Like you, bro. Look, you need to continue the generational trauma in the first place. So if you're when you
Okay,
have
okay.
kids, then
Mm-hmm.
they can have hopefully you do even a worse job at generational
Uh-huh.
trauma. You know what I'm saying? So that
Uh-huh.
your kids have an
You mean a
even
better
bigger,
job? So
yeah, a
I
better job
more.
at generational
Yeah,
trauma.
yeah.
So a worse job at raising kids. So
Uh-huh.
you like even your kids are having they have a bigger chip on their shoulder than you. You know what I'm saying? So whereas you're
Damn, that's
helping
a
your
life hack.
exactly, like
Damn.
you're
Mhm.
helping all these clients in a rapid
Mhm.
diligence in acquiring
Uh-huh.
those businesses, right? Guess who's going to be
Right.
building those businesses in the first place? It's going to be your
Damn, my
kids,
kid.
bro.
That's Dude, I think you just hacked life, and I also don't think there's gonna be an episode 4 of Entrepreneurs
I
Galore.
honestly I, I will I think I might have to move to Rumble. So
is, is that Montana?
no, Rumble is like another social media platform. So
Oh, I
uh
thought you were saying because you're gonna move to Montana, some like city, some obscure city in
no,
Montana, so
no,
then the
no.
TikTok bros can't find you there.
I think the TikTok bros can find you anywhere. Actually, yeah, I think I should probably move to Montana. I might. I don't know. My kind. Well, our kind. I don't think will actually fare well over there. But I guess I'll take my chances. So who's more dangerous, like Montana residents, like the three Montana residents, or
Mhm.
1,000 TikTok bros?
Honestly, I think you're good in Montana. I think that might be the move. There's some good nature out there. I think it'd be kind of nice,
Yeah,
to have.
I'm gonna be honest. I'm not a nature guy. I mean, like I like nature. I just don't like
Mhm.
camping. I know you're really like into camping. I
Yeah.
personally don't like it. I'm just like no. Like I just need like a bed to sleep on.
Hmm. Fair enough. Yeah, that makes sense.
So okay. So all jokes aside, right? So
Hmm.
how much like so it's going back to the private equity thing, right?
Uh-huh.
That you were managing for a really long. How long were you managing it, first of all?
It's like 2, 3 years.
Okay, so you were managing it for 2 3 years, and you were still in college at the time, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you obviously mentioned that it was very stressful. So can you talk about like that, like how exactly were like things, and how did it feel like when it was going good and when it was going like complete shit? Like what exactly were you going through in that time frame?
Yeah, I think when things weren't going well, as in most situations, it was not a pleasant feeling. And I think the reason is because when things go bad with a business you've bootstrapped, and when I say bootstrap, for anyone not familiar with the term, it's basically a business you use your own capital for, right? So you own 100% of, you don't have investors, any outside people that you answer to. So for a business you've bootstrapped, when things go bad, right, there's you basically it's all on you, right? But that also means you don't have to answer to anyone else. If things are slow, if things are bad, it's not like you have to report to investors or anything like that. When things are going well and you're running a business, like a PE fund, it's one of those things where that's expected, right? You said you would bring in 20% annualized returns. If you do that, you're only owning up to your word. So great, right? I mean, sure, there's some level of appreciation, but it's almost like expected, right? That's why you take a pretty hefty fee off the top. But when things are not going well, now you have like 40 or so odd investors pissed off, right? And so it was one of those things where I just didn't enjoy that process because, again, I always say this: I'm an engineer at heart. I like building things. I like creating things, and a lot of my job with the PE fund became like reporting to investors. A lot of it becomes fundraising. A lot of it just becomes more administrative, and you become less and less involved in like the day to day of what you actually enjoy. So it was hands down one of the most like it was hands down one of the most like the toughest times of my life in terms of like mental stress and stuff. And it also sucked because being in college, you have coursework. The class I was part of, or like the UT Austin for their comp sci program, it's a pretty tough program, right? So it was a tough at school, it was tough with money, it was some personal stuff happening, and then it was this on top, right? So I think it was just not a great combination. But yeah, that's kind of one of the reasons I didn't enjoy it as much. And I would do it again, by the way, but with the knowledge I have now, but I would structure it very differently.
How differently would you structure it? Like, what would you do different?
I think I think it's more like what I know now, right? Like having by that at that point I had only bought a few businesses. At this point, we've like myself, my team, we've overseen a lot of acquisitions. We know what goes down, we know what happens. So one, I think I have more knowledge, but structuring it differently. We allowed a lot of like family and friends, and not any of my family and friends, but like my CFO, his kind of personal contacts. We allowed a lot of like individual investors to come in, non-accredited investors. I wouldn't do that again. I would be very careful on the people that we let invest and make sure that they have some sort of background in investing, or they make a lot of investments where this doesn't become such a big deal for them, right? And so it's kind of the idea. It's not really smart money versus dumb money, because I know there's that idea as well of having investors that bring in smart money because they can also help you with your operations and stuff. But I think it's also like vetting your investors in a way that you basically don't have anyone who they're investing $10,000 with like $50,000 in total savings, right? That becomes like 20% of their savings. That stuff just I wouldn't do that. I would be very very careful on who I let come on board as an investor. And again, we had some great investors. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think that structure makes a lot of sense long term.
In terms of like getting friends and families involved and whatnot, and non-accredited investors, I guess like that doesn't make sense on the long term, correct?
Yeah, in the sense that I think it makes your job as a fund manager a lot more stressful, because now you have to, because investors are a lot more stressed from the day to day kind of ups and downs. And so I think that's what it just makes your job more stressful than it needs to be. Whereas if you have like an investor who's accredited and they deploy like $2-3 million of capital every single year, this is just a part of the puzzle for them, right? Like this is just one thing they're investing in. So it's not like all of their eggs are in one basket, so it makes it a lot easier. They have more clear expectations. They understand how this process works. They're just more seasoned in that department, right? So I think it makes that a lot easier. But yeah, that's kind of what I mean by long term. It's more just long term peace of mind and quality of life as a fund manager.
Understood. Okay. So I think one of the important questions that I think I can ask you, because I since you kind of deal with like the online marketplace in terms of like business and whatnot, and you just deal with businesses all around.
Mhm.
Obviously there's been a talk about like an onlooming recession, about like I guess a lot of it has just been like fear mongering of like, hey, we're about to hit a recession, we're about to hit a recession. And I
Mhm.
feel like I've been hearing about that since like 2021, and it's obviously 2023. And technically speaking, we've been in a recession, but like it still has not been announced that we're in a recession, right? So how do you think that that's going to affect, like, do you think a recession is coming in the first place, first of all?
Mhm.
And if yes, like, do you think it'll be as bad as '08, when the real estate crisis that we had in America? Or like how bad do you think that will be? Like, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think my thoughts on this would be about as good as anyone else's, because I don't have like an economic background or anything.
Okay.
In terms of a recession coming, I think so, but I think it would be a controlled recession in the sense that I don't I think we like the Fed has taken or whatever, right? Like we've taken enough steps where it shouldn't be as bad as it was anticipated. I think it's just going to be an economic slowdown, right? And that's just the idea is that inflation and recession are inverse operations, right? And so in order to stop hyperinflation, you kind of have to put the economy into a recession, because that stops the circulation of cash. So I think there will be a recession, which will hopefully counteract some of the hyperinflation, which already is, right, that we saw
Mhm.
over the last year and a half or so. In terms of it being like anywhere close to '08, I absolutely don't think that's possible, because I think again, I was really young at the time, but I think the '08 '09 recession, like what happened there was it's a miracle it wasn't worse than it was, right? But it was a complete financial meltdown, right? And so I don't think we're going to see that or even close to that. I think we're going to see is like it's just going to get a little bit tougher. It's going to get a little bit harder. There's going to be less free flowing cash. We're already seeing this, right? But it's just going to get kind of expand upon that a little bit. But again, I have no idea. I mean, I know I say that as almost like matter of factly, but again,
Yeah.
I just just to clarify as a disclaimer, I have no idea because again, I'm not. I don't think anyone has an idea, but I think there are people out there that have a better idea than the average person. I don't think I'm one of those people. So that, but that's just my hypothesis or my theory based on what I've read and what I understand.
Understood. Yeah. So your guess is as best as mine. I genuinely don't have any idea of where we're exactly headed either.
Yeah.
I think I could just talk about it, but at the end of the day, I just don't know what the hell where we're actually gonna go. So yeah.
No,
So
exactly. Yeah.
yeah. You want to do a rapid fire round?
Sure. Let's
All
do
right,
it.
let's do it. Okay. So I'm gonna read off some questions, and just
Mhm.
tell me the first thing that comes to your mind, or whatever you actually want to say. All right. So
Okay.
if you had to start from scratch again today, you had zero. If you had to start from
Mhm.
scratch again today, what would you do or build?
Um, I'd probably build like just a service business or something like in the purest form of entrepreneurship, like something with a clear value proposition that can run super lean and it's profitable, right? So I would probably do that, or yeah, probably build like some sort of service business, some sort of agency where we're providing a clear value prop, build it up to a point where it's profitable, and then use the capital to then go build things I actually want to work on or care
Can
about.
you
But
give me an example of what you would actually build?
yeah, so I mean, I think I would just provide services, honestly. Like, I don't know, like building out websites or doing SEO, just the traditional stuff you see. And I know there's a ton of competition, but there's also a ton of demand there. So I would just do something that's super, like it's kind of proven the test of time. It's been there for a long time, and I know I can make money. And the goal again would be to just to build up that nest egg a little, have some capital to play with, and then go and do something more interesting or more unique.
Okay. Okay. That's a good answer, I think. So what keeps you up at night or gives you nightmares?
Like I'm pretty sure I have undiagnosed insomnia, so I'm pretty sure that's what keeps me up at night. But really, like in terms of like the business I run, right? Like scaling a service business is pretty tough, right? Especially when you're so niche and technical in the work you provide, right? Like we're not doing like SEO work or social media management. We're doing like things that very few people in the world know how to do because it's very unique and niche, right? So I think it's tough to scale that. That's and then it's a low volume, high dollar kind of business. So there's a lot of like fluctuations. As we've grown, those fluctuations have reside. They've kind of pulled back a little bit, but they're still definitely there. And then a business like this is obviously highly impacted by macroeconomic conditions, right? So interest rates are a big deal when it comes to buying businesses. Recessions are a big deal because if interest rates are high, money becomes expensive. If money becomes expensive, you're not going to invest money, right? Because borrowing money becomes expensive. And so that makes a difference. If a recession occurs, then people are less likely to want to go out of their way to invest in like alternative things, or they'd rather just put their money into an index fund or something and just kind of ride it out. So I think both of those things kind of they're tough, but at the same time, my philosophy has always been that, hey, like you control what you can and you let go what you can't, right? So there's not a lot I can do about the macroeconomic conditions. They already affect us right now, by the way. They already make a big difference, but I can change what I can change, right? I can from within the business itself. So that's kind of what I how I normally look at it.
Okay, that makes sense. So what piece of advice would you give somebody who's afraid to taking the first step in becoming an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think most of this would be kind of what we've already talked about, but finding your why is important. Making a good game plan, and then kind of the whole idea of like knowing what to expect. And this goes back to what we talked about earlier about like the sports analogy and understanding what that looks like, what that process looks like of becoming an entrepreneur, what the day to day looks like. Yeah, but I think find your why is really important. Like, why do you like genuinely? Why do you want to become an entrepreneur, right? And if you can't answer that question with a good answer, then it's going to be really hard when things get tough to like be able to say, hey, this was my why. I have to keep pushing, right? And that applies to everything, right? So when you think about like, I mean, one of the most common ones people will say is like, if you're trying to lose weight, right? Like, why do you want to lose weight, right? What is the reason? And if you the people with the strongest whys are the one that do it long term, right? Because again, when chips are down and things get tough, like you need something to go back to and say, hey, this is why I started and this is why I'm going to see it through.
Okay, so definitely have your why, and
Mhm.
as long as it's a strong why to you, you would definitely just build your business around that. So
Exactly.
one last question from the rapid fire round. Share the
Mhm.
best piece of advice that you were given.
A mentor of mine once shared a quote with me, and I think it's a pretty prominent quote, but I really liked it. And so he said that we estimate what we can achieve in a year, and we overestimate what we can achieve in a year, and we underestimate what we can achieve in 10 years, right? And so
Mm,
I really like that quote because I think it speaks true to like most people starting businesses, especially. I have a 2 year rule on failure. My whole thing is like if I don't give something 2 years, I didn't give it a fair shot. And so after 2 years, if I don't want to work on it, that's fine. But if I quit something before 2 years, I didn't quit on the business, I quit on myself. And so what that does is that it prevents me from starting things and getting shiny object syndrome for things that I don't see myself working on for 2 years. So there have been a lot of things where I'm like, hey, I would love to work on this. And I'm like, will I do this for the next 2 years? And if the answer is not a resounding yes, I stay away from it. And I think, you hear all these statistics where people say like, oh, like 90 something percent of entrepreneurs fail, this, that. But the truth is most people just don't see things through, right? Because what we talked about, when things get hard, when things don't become as fun, when the work gets grueling, people are just like, hey, I don't need this. I have a job. I have this. I can do this. I don't need to see this through. And their why is not strong enough. So they quit. So I would say that 2 year rule has really saved me in a lot of ways. And it was actually my rule when I quit my job. I said that, hey, if this business doesn't take off in 2 years, I'll just get a job again. But I'm not going to quit before 2 years. I'm going to give it a full 2 years. And if I don't make what I want to in 2 years, then we can have that conversation. But before that, I refuse to give up on it. So I think a lot of people, like, they look at that 1 year timeline and they're like, oh, like, I can't believe I did so little in a year. I can't believe I've come so, I haven't come very far in a year. But the truth is most things take a long time. And if you're willing to write it out, that chance of success becomes so much higher, right? It becomes so magnified because that success rate you see, I don't know where people come up with these numbers or what the actual statistical analysis is of it, but like if you hear 90%, that includes everyone that gives up within like the first month of starting something, right?
mhm.
So if you just play out the timeline, your success rate gets higher and higher each time. I'm not saying it ever goes to 100 or even if it gets anywhere close to that, but your success rate looks a lot better the more you work on something. And industries are hard to break into. It's hard to really understand what's going on behind an industry until you spend some time with it. And so, yeah, I would say take your time, give things their natural course, and actually give things the time they deserve. Because if you start 5 businesses and you give each a year over the course of 5 years, at the end, you're probably not going to have a single business. But if you start one and you give it 5 years, you're way more likely to have a business that will stand the test of time and that will have some level of longevity.
I 100% agree. I think if people just put in the time, I think that they would actually be more successful, especially with, just the advent of the internet. I think it's a great time to just create anything that you want. And that's really one of the main reasons why I started this, because I was like, I rather be a failure and say that I at
Mhm.
least tried, and just
Mhm.
not say that I didn't try at all on my deathbed, at least. So
100%. Yeah.
yeah, but Ahmed, it was great having you on, man. Go ahead, the floor is all yours. Promote whatever you want, as long as it's not, I guess your OnlyFans, but promote whatever you
Oh,
want.
man.
Any products, anything that you
Mhm.
have coming up, where people can actually find you, and obviously everything is going to be in the description down below. So
Mhm.
go ahead, man. The floor is all yours.
Yeah, I don't think I have a ton to promote, but yeah, I mean, this has been awesome. I've had a great time, so thank you for having me. Yeah, I mean, you can find me on Twitter. And if you want my business one, it's at Rapid Diligence. You can follow me on my personal one too. And if anyone listening, if you ever have questions, if you want to talk, always feel free to reach out. I think you'll have my email in like the show notes and stuff, so you can find it there. Yeah, and download which one because it's a cool app. And if you're looking to buy a business, reach out to us at Rapid Diligence.
Absolutely. Oh, also, I completely forgot about this, so we can't just end
Uh-huh.
without mentioning this.
Oh no.
Your driver's academy, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So yeah, and if you don't know how to drive a stick shift vehicle, and you're in Houston or Austin or kind of in that area, you should check out Manual Driving Academy. The story for that is really funny too, because
Go
it
ahead.
really
I
just
want, I want, I want the story.
no, it was so I was like bored, right? As with most things. So I was like, hey, like I love driving stick. I've taught a few people. I enjoyed the process. I was like, I spent like, my entire time working in front of a computer. I want to do something like kind of just outside, right? So I was looking for it for more of a hobby, right? I was like, oh, I wonder if there's something out there where I can teach people how to drive stick and just like like 3 to 4 times a month, right? Just to get away from the desk and do something different, right? So I found this company and they do that and they provide you with like the students, and all you do is you show up with your manual vehicle and you teach people to drive, they pay you out, right? I was like, okay, cool, that sounds good. And then I realized that so on their highest plan, right, what they do is the amount they take, right, is insane. At least I was like, this is wild, right? So they charge the student $500 for like their highest class, and they pay you 150 out of that,
So
right? So
they
they're
paid the driver $100.
150, yeah. So they're
Okay.
taking out $350
Uh-huh.
as a company,
Just
and I
for
was like,
connecting the
dude,
two people.
yeah, and I'm providing my vehicle, it's my gas, my insurance, my everything, right? And
Uh-huh.
so I was like, dude, that's insane. That's a lot of money. So I could literally, and the funny thing is, I didn't even do this to make money. It was more just like a fun part-time, like side thing, right? It was just to do something outside of sitting on my computer all day, right? But then that annoyed me. I was like, man, I could do this better. So then we started Manual Driving Academy. I started with a friend of mine, and yeah, I mean, we're mostly in Houston right now. We're looking to expand in like Austin, maybe Dallas soon. But yeah, it's a fun little thing. I'm passionate about cars, as you know. I'm passionate about saving the manuals. So it's a fun little thing. If anyone wants to learn, it's enjoyable. It's really unique because it's kind of like a lost art. But yeah, so we have a few instructors in Houston that we've connected students with. So it's good because they get to make a little bit of money on the side, and we get to do something we love. So it's been a fun experience. It's definitely more of just a side thing for now, but I've enjoyed it so far.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that you enjoy it, and obviously if you guys need to learn how to drive stick in the Houston area, please reach out to Ahmed or his company, Manual Driving Academy. Uh, this will be the end for sure, for sure.
For
But
sure.
yeah, I would love to have you on again, Ahmed. If I keep on going with this, maybe in like a year's time or maybe 6 months. I don't
Hmm.
know. Maybe we'll have the fictional character of Dennis on if he ever decides to, stop being a corporate slave. But we don't know yet.
Uh, yeah,
But
jury's
uh,
still out on that.
yeah, jury's still out on that. We don't know if he is just going to disappear after certain life events. Either way, so
This
Ahmed,
guy.
it was great having you, man. I appreciate you doing this with me. I appreciate you coming on and spending your time over here. Um, you know, I hope you guys liked it as well. I hope you can actually get some customers from this. I don't know how many millionaires are actually watching my podcast, but maybe the 203 subscribers that I have, maybe like at least one of them is a millionaire. I don't know though.
Yeah,
But
we'll
thank
see.
you. Yeah, we'll see. The odds of it happening are very unlikely, but we'll see. But thank you so much for your time, man. I appreciate it. And thanks for coming on once again, man.
Absolutely, man. It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
For sure, man. All right, everybody, take care. That was episode 3 of Entrepreneurs Galore. I hope you guys enjoyed it.